Hello and welcome back to the Gravity Doctors. I'm Dr Lachlan Kent, and unfortunately Brennan couldn't be here with us today, but I have a special guest, Dr Mats Niklasson, who's a developmental psychologist and co-founder of Sensorimotor Therapy. So we're going to explore how early vestibular development shapes both physical coordination and the narrative sense of self. So drawing on nearly 40 years of clinical experience with children and adults experiencing coordination and concentration difficulties, Mats explains how early reflexes, especially the Moro reflex, the sort of startle falling reflex, connect infants to gravity. And then when these developmental processes are disrupted, the result may be delayed motor patterns, emotional dysregulation, learning challenges, and even later life identity instability. So using the life of Kurt Cobain as a psychobiographical study, the conversation really explores how gravitational insecurity may influence creativity, mental health, and the lifelong struggle to feel at home in one's own body. But just a word, there was a technical glitch and there's a pause in the recording where we had to record over 2 sessions. So you'll notice that about halfway through. Okay, enjoy.
But my background, as you said, is as a PE teacher. And that's how I got interested in children who underachieved in sports. And that brought me to sensorimotor training in the 1980s. And I was very much inspired by a Danish physiotherapist, Britta Holle. And then I met with a psychologist in Chester, Great Britain, Peter Blythe, who taught my wife Irene and me a lot about sensorimotor development. And from his theories and practice, we have developed a method together with a Finnish professor. He's dead, unfortunately now. But we cooperated for almost 15 years, and we developed a method for sensorimotor training, which we call sensorimotor therapy, which has been evaluated and which is the basis of my thesis. So from physical activities, I sort of slipped into psychology. And in our second study, we were able to show a connection between physiology and psychology. And that's how this field could become psychology instead of physical or sports or so, which was sort of what one can expect from the beginning, but we could turn it into psychology instead.
Sure. And what was your connection then to the vestibular system? You've started something called the Vestibularis Clinic with your wife Irene. What was the light bulb moment, or what was the turning point for you there that really focused you on balance? I know it's obviously very central to coordination and maintaining balance, but what was the psychological insight that took you that way?
We were all born by a set of primary reflexes, which are a sort of lifelines, and they are very strong during the first 6 months to first year of life. And especially the Moro reflex is very closely connected to the vestibular system.
Is that the falling one? Is that where you branch out? Yeah. You throw the arms out,
The connection is very close between this primary reflex and the vestibular system. And so we saw this connection between children with motor problems and also their difficulties with keeping the balance, using their eyes in the right way. And this brought concentration problems and learning difficulties. So that's how we found this connection, and we have kept very strong to that idea that the vestibular system is very important for our early development. And the vestibular system is developed very early in utero. Already around the 11th week in utero, it's sort of mature. So logically, it should have a lot to do with further development. But most probably, it's not sort of used on its full potential until we are born.
Born as in we have to bear our own weight. Yeah.
So from there, we sort of have to defy gravity. And I think, from my point of view, none of us is sort of perfect when it comes to the vestibular system when we are born. We are sort of on a continuum. And from my point of view, those who are sort of in our work underachieving might be on that part of the continuum that they need help to re-establish as much potential as possible of the vestibular capacity.
Right, so it's a very empirically grounded observational thesis that you came up with. You're witnessing children with deficits or dysfunctions or difficulties, and through remedial therapy, you've sort of honed in on one of the earliest, the most fundamental systems, the vestibular system, and that's obviously, a long time ago now, and through the last 15, 20, 30 years, you've developed more onto the, the biographical end of this and become interested in, the narrative sense of self, not this embodied, somatic, visceral sense of self that Brennan and I talk about a lot, but really the extended self, the memories and everything that come along with, gravity in the abstract. So life's ups and downs, I call it. And you've done some recent work lately on, I've read your piece on Kurt Cobain, who obviously died by suicide in the early 90s when I was around 10, but that must have left an impression on you to be writing about him, 30 years later. Do you want to tell us about that, how you came from sensorimotor, training work to talking about ethnobiography or ethnography?
May I just fill in to what I was into first? In our therapy, we sort of go back again, and we do fetal movements, very slow vestibular movements, and it's impressing what is happening when you sort of start the vestibular system with fetal movements. So there is a possibility to sort of go back and regain and go further again. So that's what the therapy is all about. But
so, sorry, are you saying that in the therapy you get children to do fetal movements or to mimic fetal movements?
Yeah,
that's the whole
together
point.
with especially the mother. So this is also a sort of attachment thing.
Yeah.
But it will take a full program to go into that. But it's very important because if a child is unable to attach to gravity, it's also difficult to attach to another human being.
Sure.
Well, so this is a very important aspect. But coming to the Kurt Cobain chapter, it was an idea which was brought up by a colleague from Pakistan who works with with issues around people dying by suicide. And we are three authors of this chapter, and I'm the oldest, and I was far too old to sort of enjoy Kurt Cobain. But Patrick, one of the other authors, he was right in the middle. They are at the same age. And then it's Alicia, who is an academic lawyer. She is too young to have experienced Kurt Cobain. So we wrote from three different aspects. And my aspect was the developmental part. So I watched documentaries and I read books and I tried to understand how his early childhood was and when it comes to his sensorimotor development, and then how his life developed in general. So that's what we have written about, what I have written about in this chapter. And what I could gain from especially a documentary about his life is that he seems to have had sensorimotor difficulties from the very beginning. He was very active, and he was he had difficulties to sleep. And when he was very young, his mother brought him to MD, so I imagine he checked his horizontal tracking and he said that, oh yes, we have a problem here. And that is also what we can see with the clients we have. They have rather severe problems to follow a horizontal tracking, which is very closely connected to how the vestibular system functions.
Right. So you're connecting via the vestibular system, which we talk about as sort of the psychobiological glue. It's what keeps the body and mind located in space and time. It makes you feel like you're centered within yourself. And obviously by dying by suicide, Kurt Cobain had major issues with his sense of self. Like he felt his sense of self had fallen, was not worthy, was in a sort of a place of pain and discomfort throughout his adult life. You talk about these episodes of whether they're depression or not, but there's definitely a sense of withdrawal from the world, even though he's a major rock star and, center of attention for a lot of people. He himself felt a need to withdraw a lot from the world and into himself to try and get that stability. Is that how you view it? That I have an issue sort of tracking the world and myself, therefore I need to withdraw and, focus energy inwards to maintain equilibrium. Is that how you view
it? My way of looking at him and his problems was to sort of try to understand what he suffered from. And what I found, reading what I could find about him, all books I could find and documents and articles in papers and journals and such, is that depression ran in the family. That's obvious. But there is no evidence that he was diagnosed by depression, for example. Yeah. And there is no certainty about the ADHD either. What is more certain is that he started a treatment with Ritalin, maybe at the age of 3, maybe at the age of 7, it's very unclear. But he couldn't cope with that, so the medication was interrupted and ended, so they didn't continue that. What is established, as far as I can see, is that he had a diagnosis of scoliosis, and he had a diagnosis of chronic bronchitis.
Right.
And he consumed a lot of cough syrup. But there are no evidence in the books or papers I have read that he was coughing a lot, but he took a lot of cough syrup. And the scoliosis, from my point of view, is also a gravitational issue.
For sure. That
the spine is sort of curving due to gravity. And what I have focused mostly on, or what I have read most around, is his stomach issues.
Yeah.
And because he seems to have suffered a lot. And as you said, he was also a sensitive person. So from my point of view, he might or very likely have been a highly sensitive person.
Right.
But, and that is not a diagnosis, that's a trait.
Yeah.
But it was not until later in the 1990s that a book about highly sensitive persons were sort of written, and the trait conceptualized.
It was parallel with the development in autism research, wasn't it? That there was a continuum of, autistic traits or states within people, but also this sensitivity. Autism comes a lot with sensory sensitivity, and so that was looked into at the same time. But it wasn't, in the early 90s when he died or when he was active, that wasn't a known term at all. People were maybe colloquially called the sensitive type. He was the sensitive type.
Yes,
but
he was a sensitive type, yeah.
It wasn't a formal observation.
Yeah. No.
So that's interesting. So he's got, this sort of syndrome, as you see it, of different symptoms, sort of clustering around gravitational influence. We talk about gut feelings. It's the first podcast episode we ever did, Brennan and I. I'll try and talk as the gastroenterologist in his absence. That gut feelings are this gut-brain connection, and that's where we really connected in biogravitational medicine, was the influence of the gut and the brain together. There's sort of vestibular, sensory, maybe horizontal tracking as well. So this led you down, quite a clear path towards a conclusion about, or a suggestion, a proposal about Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, and Brennan's papers have inspired me a lot. I read them from the beginning. I think almost when he published his first publication, I read it with great interest. And in the sources I have used, there is only one mention about a possible cause for his stomach problems being IBS. And a few doctors mentioned it, but the diagnosis wasn't established until shortly after his death.
Right.
So the diagnosis didn't exist when he lived. So that's why I call my part Kurt Cobain a victim of his time. And he struggled very hard to be understood. And as far as I understand, he was a regular visitor to hospitals and to MDs to try to find out what he suffered from. And he sort of begged at the end of his life that his stomach aches should be named Kurt Cobain's disease, and that's why I also end my chapter with saying that that could be an honorable name, more or less seriously. But
Right.
I think there are, reading Brennan Spiegel's both his book, The Pull, which is very, very interesting, and his articles gives a lot of clues to Kurt Cobain's life and his suffering, and also that he might possibly have suffered from IBS, because ulcers was out of question, and Crohn's disease was also out of question, and they couldn't find any reason for his suffering.
I think Brennan's spoken about it before, that irritable bowel syndrome is like depression, like other conditions. It is a syndrome. It's no one particular symptom that gives it away. These are, conditions that are sometimes difficult to diagnose. They're quite often borderline between episodic or, in nature. It depends on what they're doing. What you've eaten, very, very contextual. So it's, when you say a victim of his time, I think now there's more awareness of these syndrome-like conditions, but back in the early 90s, I don't think that was the case.
I have waited for 30 years for someone like Brennan Spiegel to come on board, to sort of help us to bring out the word about how important it is to see us humans as gravitational beings on Earth. To me, it's evident that it is so, but unfortunately, it's not so for everyone. And among my clients, it has been rather usual with stomach aches, and it's not unusual that the client we have had have been to doctors, been examined for stomach aches, and they can't find anything. And when we started training, the aches disappear.
Yeah.
And it's the same with headaches. So
just, intuitively and experientially, it makes sense, doesn't it? So if you think of motion sickness, you get headaches, you get, nausea, you maybe lean to one side, you have compensatory movements where you try to balance the system out artificially. If you say it's a continuum when people are born of how well their vestibular system, their gravitational management is gluing them to themselves and to the world. If that's kind of off, then you would expect over the developmental life course for there to be long-term compensatory mechanisms as well. Maybe curvature of the spine is related to, trying to balance things out or reorient, maintain a posture that keeps everything in slightly better alignment biologically. And then I'm running a study at the moment with an honours student about heavy metal music, or preferences for heavy metal music. So even within Kurt Cobain's musical taste, there's an element of gravity. He was really into heavy, cathartic, energy release kind of music, noise, grit, distortion, which is all part of the heaviness syndrome. There's no one, element of music that makes it heavy. Again, it's this diffuse, combination of factors within the music. So you could almost, I'm being very psychobiographical, autoethnographical here, say that his preference for, or our hypothesis in the research is that there's a preference for this type of music as a compensatory mechanism for highly sensitive persons, maybe people on autism or ADHD spectra. And, there's a purpose to that music. It acts kind of like, this is the analogy we're using, like a weighted blanket. It creates comfort through gravitational stimuli. So for autism spectrum disorders, often a weighted blanket is, a sensory way of down-regulating negative emotions or negative feelings. Heavy metal music is the same. It has this down-regulation, even though it's very intense and up and agitated. Actually, the effect is about feeling down-regulated after the song or during the drop in the song. There's always this heavy drop. So I find that fascinating, that maybe his music was self-medicating.
It reminds me of a study I read about a long time ago. I have it somewhere, but it's about a sort of a fish membrane which we have in the inner ear, in the vestibular system, which reacts on bass tones. So when you sort of start that system, it makes you feel that you move.
Yeah.
So this is very interesting because what I have written about also is coach potatoes.
Yeah.
That they maybe they want to move, but they don't have the possibility to move because it's uncomfortable. And that's why they are sitting there. They can't break the vicious circle.
Yeah.
But also listening to a lot of bass tones could give you the impression that you are moving and that you are kept going. Yeah.
And if you want a heavy bass drum, that's the symbol, the musical symbol of, let's get the party started. Let's start dancing. Let's start moving. It comes with its own energy that you're meant to actually feel in your gut as well. There's something about listening to music in headphones, even though you hear the bass tones, you don't feel them the same way as when they're rocking through a club or coming out of a big subwoofer. You actually need to feel them viscerally as well to get the full somatic effect. And there's like extreme versions of this. I went to a religious school where I sang in the choir, but we had a massive cathedral, and I think it was the Southern Hemisphere's, at the time, the Southern Hemisphere's largest pipe organ, church organ, and it has those almost sub-audible bass tones, the pedal tones, and there was something very mystical and numinous when the organist played those bass tones when we're talking, we're singing these highly emotional songs around Easter or around Christmas. I really love church music. I think it's fantastic. It's beautiful. I loved singing it. I love being in, that cavernous, awe-inspiring place with these deep, deep tones. We're not getting the party started, but we're getting emotion charged from those lowest visceral notes. I think it's fascinating. So Kurt Cobain, in that way, playing very bass-driven, heavy music, that's another version of that. It's a noisy, in-your-face, high-energy version.
This talking about sound is very interesting because as a complementary to our sensorimotor training, we also have auditory perceptual training. We are following the theories or practice from a French Dr Mats, who said or wrote that we should have a very special hearing curve, and when we assess our clients, we can see that most of them, in fact, are too high on the bass and too low on the treble, which also contributes to an increased tiredness. Because if you take in all bass bass sounds or low frequency sounds, it will make you very, very tired.
Yeah, right.
And from the ear and into the brain, the hearing nerve and the vestibular nerves is very close. So sounds are affecting the vestibular system, and the vestibular system is sort of affecting the sound. Yeah, but
so there's almost a parasympathetic effect there. So we're talking about the vagus nerve, as being this driver of serotonin and creating this calming effect when it's stimulated. So bass notes have that. They can have a paradoxical effect because it can get the party started. That's the rhythm when it's low, but also can have this very calming, deep, deep meditation, deep tones. We're talking about the same. I talk about it in terms of a vector. It's like we're linguistically, semantically talking about something somatic, something physical and visceral. And I think that's the connection that you've made in your research, isn't it? It's from going from sensorimotor therapy to psychobiography. We're talking about the sense of self, this abstract, again, a syndrome kind of thing. There's no one thing that defines your sense of self. It's diffuse, and it's constructed or emergent from your autobiography. And in someone like Kurt Cobain's case, where that autobiography was, we can't just say troubled, because he was obviously a very successful, very capable. I've seen, videos and interviews with him, a very empathic, very switched on person.
Yeah.
But obviously highly troubled in private.
Yeah.
So that biography would have destabilized his sense of self.
Absolutely. And that's why the first part of our life is, it's not a sandwich. It's a lot of hard work. That time shouldn't be wasted by sitting in front of a computer or a telephone or such. We have, according to Paul Schilder, who did research in the 30s and the 40s, he was a psychiatrist, and reading between the lines in his books, we have sort of a time to adapt to gravity, which is about 15 years. He sort of says that it takes the human body about 15 years to establish a full connection with gravity. And that means that children should be activated most of the time during, let's say, the first 7 years of life, when they are still rather right-minded, right-brained. And it's
and
also
plastic. And neuroplastic. And all the brain changes.
So they should play, they should experience, they should have fun. They shouldn't sit still, because around the age of 7, 8, there is a transition from basically the right brain to the left brain. And that's when they are starting to be more critical to themselves and to what they have done before. And that's when the learning can start, from my point of view and from what I have learned from others. But today it's quite the opposite. From my point of view, if we have a triangle here, we have a sensorimotor base and we have the cognitive top. And you have to have a very stable sensorimotor base in order to be able to handle all cognition. And as you get older, the more you learn, the broader and more stable the base has to be. But today, it's quite the opposite. You have the sensorimotor part down here, and we are putting in a lot of information all the time. And to me, that makes a risk of implosion. You can't hold it.
Yeah.
So in order to make our children even more mentally fit, we have to support their playing and their using of their body. We have to adapt them to gravity. in order for them to bloom later.
They have to learn to fall. They have to learn what falling is, how to fall safely, how the limits of their body through gravitational engagement. Like, a child can't learn to, roll, sit up, walk, stand, walk, ride a bike unless they're trialing and erroring, unless they're failing. Like, we have to allow them the opportunity to have those accidents. So I think I've read a little bit about sort of helicopter parenting, which has been the sort of the MO for parents over the last 20, 30 years, of making sure everything's safe and, restricting activities to the point that they're couch-based or more home-based, worried about, real risks outside, but actually risk is where, learning happens, taking, some little gambles. And I've got a 5-year-old son. You talk about this transition. He's just turned 6, and for Christmas we bought him a go-kart, an electric go-kart. And he flies down this curve in our street. He's throwing himself off the go-kart. He hasn't flipped it, but he takes it up onto the gutter, and he's doing 360s and 720s, like pedal to the metal, helmet on, he's safe, but he's having the time of his life. But like you say, it's play. You're a PE teacher by training. It's not just sports. It's not just physical activity in the structured sense. It's also just letting kids run around and be silly. Like, that's where they wrestle each other. They get, G-forces between each other. You leave a group of kids, they'll play tag. They'll play these games where they're just testing their limits. It's all about, it's not competition. It's not strict competition. It's testing each other's limits.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I happily grew up when we had a very different society. There was not that much to be afraid of. As a child, I could be very safe outside, and we could play, and we could do dangerous games and such. And we all survived. But
most.
Yeah, but to me, in a metaphorical way, we are giving children answers to questions they never asked, instead of sort of waiting for children and be with them outside when they are climbing stones, climbing trees, help them if they need, and bring them down if they need.
Okay, here's that technical glitch. Here's the break in the recording that I mentioned earlier. So you might notice a bit of discontinuity. Apologies. We tried to pick up the conversation the next day. So, Mats, we've talked about Kurt Cobain, and we should return to that, I think, because that's what actually brought our work together. That's, you reached out and you showed us your work on that. So why don't we return to that theme and what you've seen in your practice as well? Why don't you describe your practice again, what you do, and how that related to Kurt Cobain?
Yeah, for nearly 40 years, I have been working with children, and mainly children and adults, with sensorimotor difficulties, coordination difficulties, and most of all, concentration problems. And from the very beginning, I was very fascinated by the vestibular system and the vestibular system's role in our development. And the vestibular system is developed very early in utero. Around the 11th week or so, it's mature. But it's questioned how gravity is influencing a fetus during that time. But anyhow, something is happening during that period, the time in utero. And being a physical education teacher by training, as I am, I was also very interested in the physiological part, the movements and such. And when we are born, we are born with primary reflexes, which helps us to survive during the first at least 6 up to 1 year. And these reflexes are very essential for us. And especially one of them, the Moro reflex, is very closely connected to the vestibular system. And
this is the one that senses falling, yeah? The Moro reflex.
Yeah,
it's when, and you throw your arms back and out when a baby feels like it's
comes
falling.
back again. Yeah, and it's this fear, this flight.
Fight or flight?
Yeah, fight or flight reflex. Yeah. Absolutely good.
Yeah.
And in almost every youngster we have met, we can see that there are the Moro reflex is not fully inhibited, and it is supposed to be suppressed, not suppressed at around 6 months, and that is when a child or an infant starts to crawl on their tummy, and some months later they go 4 feet, and then at the age of 1 year or so they are standing erect. And very many of the children, or all the children we have met almost, they haven't been through this gross motor patterns. They haven't been creeping and crawling on their tummy. They haven't crept on the 4 feet properly. And many are also late walkers and also late talkers. And when we start working with them as if the vestibular and the gravity system sort of is of importance, something happens.
Right.
And the development starts all over again, so to say. So we get the children to develop or envelop this basic gross motor patterns, and they sort of emerge on their own automatically.
Right.
When we start to stimulate the client or the child or the youngster by doing vestibular exercises.
So are you targeting, you're saying the Moro reflex is not fully developed or suppressed or compensated for through later development. So do you target the movements that you're doing? Are you trying to get that Moro reflex in session? Are you trying to, make the child fall but feel safe and brace themselves in a different way other than reflexively? Is that what you're trying to do? Take them back to that movement?
No, not exactly. What we are doing is that we imitate early fetal movements.
You go back even earlier, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
we do. And it's very much about attachment, the child and the mother. And something amazing happens during these exercises. And for us, this is a reconnection with gravity. I have written about the maturation of the vestibular system, and also that I suspect that when we are born, we are not. The vestibular system is on a sort of a continuum. It's not bad and it's not absolutely good. We are somewhere in between. And some children are they haven't the capability enough to connect with gravity.
Mm.
It's and to me that will sort of delay the development,
Mm-hmm.
and also the children will skip some parts of the natural development, and then I mean crawling on their tummies and go 4 feet, creeping and crawling.
Yeah.
And to me, these are signs that the nervous system is sort of in it's a rested development, which
Yeah. Okay.
has to be released. And the releasing is done by activating the vestibular system through a connection with gravity.
And the mother. So you're sort of
And the mother, yeah.
so using fetal movements where in utero, even though we're fully supported against gravity, there is a sense that your own G-forces that you can move within is how you sense the gravitational environment. Even though you're completely held and supported,
Yeah.
that development allows you to sense there is something there. There's weight, there's rotational force, centrifugal force. Like there are things in there that you need to be able to manage in order to exist outside of the womb. But
Yeah,
children who don't have that experience necessarily, or physiologically don't have the vestibular system to explore that internal environment, then struggle externally.
Yeah, and all I can say is that my experience has taught me that something happens when we act with the client as if gravity and the vestibular system matters. And of course, I don't know what is happening because we haven't measured that, but we can see over and over again that the same pattern is repeated. So we are pretty sure on what will sort of happen during the process.
So you
And that
mentioned,
makes
you mentioned this last time after we recorded, before we realized that the recording hadn't worked, that actually there's a kind of emotional behavioral regression within the children. Is that right?
yeah.
There is, they might regress in age in terms of milestones, maturity, their emotional regulation might become upset by this process of going back in gravitational development.
Yeah, and yeah, something like that. And to me, or to us, this has shown that there is a possibility to, in a way, restart the system. And we have also shown in our papers that there is a connection between the physiological and the psychological. So what the parents, or mostly the mother from the beginning, do with the child is something physiological. But we can see as a result something psychological. So these parts are sort of brought together. And the most interesting part for us is that it's repeated all over again from child to child to child. So if there is what I call an arrested development, this development has to be released. And when it's released, there will be an emergence of expected motor patterns to come out. I'm convinced that we are pre-programmed with a certain way of developing. And unfortunately, this is very, very overlooked within medicine and within psychology also. And I think if we could develop these thoughts it should be so helpful for so many more children. And this is also why I'm so hooked at the theories of Brennan Spiegel, because I have waited for this for, as I said, for more than 30 years. But it has to be said by someone like him to be able to get through. And coming back to some of the clients we have met, it's not unusual that there are stomach problems, stomach aches and headaches, which has been examined by physicians, medical doctors, without they finding any cause for it.
Yeah.
But when we start the training, the stomach aches goes away, the headaches goes away. So there ought to be some sort of connection.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
And for you, the vestibular system, which we know is unlike other sensory modes, sort of in the brain, there is no primary vestibular cortex. It actually projects all through the brain. So it makes sense that there are sort of whole body and whole mind effects when you actually target the vestibular system, that it doesn't just affect one mode of perception or cognition, it goes across the board physiologically and psychologically. And that's Brennan's idea from the gravity and the gut paper, that gravity actually sits above various systems, and because it has all body impacts and all brain impacts, like across the brain, across different cognitive and emotional systems or functions, that it's very holistic. And what you're saying is that there are holistic effects when you do your somatosensory therapy with children, that it's not either or, it's both and, it's all together.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
and that brought you to Kurt Cobain as well. That was part of your through line, your thought line to Kurt Cobain, that maybe there was something underlying his various symptoms.
Yeah, but when I started this research on Kurt Cobain, in the beginning, I did, as I said, I didn't know much about him. But my part of this paper was to try to find out how his child development had been, and his life development had been. And when I started to read, I could see very many similarities with the children who I have met over the years. And seeing this documentary, it became obvious that he struggled with these types of problems which we deal with. And even if the signs are rather subtle when the child is small, as older they get, the more problematic it gets. It's like a cake. So
it's a developmental trajectory, isn't it? It can start very close, but the trajectory can take you away from those normal developmental milestones that you were talking about, and through teenage years and into your 20s, that can be quite a strong divergence mentally and physically.
Absolutely. And when I sort of understood how he suffered from his stomach aches, his stomach problems, I remembered what I had read from Brennan Spiegel. And so I tried to connect it, and I found very many similarities. And that is the reason why I suggested that he might have suffered from IBS also. But there are only, as I have mentioned, two diagnoses which are verified by medical doctors or psychiatrists, and that was scoliosis and bronchitis. but he likely also had ADHD, and there is a very close connection between ADHD and developmental coordination disorder, which is my field. So it's more than 50% connectivity between those.
Right. So scoliosis is curvature of the spine, like a
Yes, it
sideways
is.
curvature of the spine.
Yeah, it's
And
curvature.
so your thought is that shows perhaps a gravitational misalignment or a compensatory mechanism for a gravitational misalignment. So maybe there was something going on with his vestibular system that wasn't properly calibrated. Like you say, it's on a continuum. There are individual differences. And because there may have been some sense of that arrested development as a young infant that changed his developmental pathway in this holistic, global, all body and mind sense. So it's not like a potential diagnosis of IBS is the cause. IBS is one of the symptoms of a higher order gravitational management problem during development. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what you are doing is applying a biogravitational lens to childhood development using Kurt Cobain as a sort of a case study, historical case study, where we know the outcomes. We know the outcomes were very severely negative in terms of, his quality of life. That at the end of his life, he felt the need to end suffering because his relationship to the world generally was out of kilter. He didn't feel at home on planet Earth. And the vestibular system or gravitational management is a key part of that in feeling that you can properly align yourself with the force of gravity. He never felt that kind of comfort.
No, that's a speculation from my side, and this hypothesis comes from my experiences with the work I have done for so many years. But it's also very interesting from my point of view that he wrote somewhere that he in a way needed his stomach ache because it gave him creativity. And this is a bit confusing. In one way, he wanted to get rid of his stomach ache, whatever it was. And on the other hand, he needed it for his creativity. And this brings me to another part which has become more and more important for me. There might be some very highly talented people who suffers like or have this arrested development, which might help them to be as creative as they are. And what I mean with that is going back to an English poet and philosopher, Coleridge, who lived in the 1900, do you say so? Yeah.
1900s or it was the 1800s, the 19th century?
1800s from my, how I count.
So I think we say 19th century. Yeah.
19th century. Okay. Yeah. And he differed between fancy imagination and secondary imagination. And fancy is some sort of general fantasy or imagination or creativity, which all of us have more or less. And the next step is a bit more refined creativity, and fantasy is imagination. And then there is the secondary imagination, which only a few of us have. And I think there are very talented people within music, within art, writing, who might suffer from what I call vestibular problems and gravitational insecurity. But it gives them it nourishes their creativity.
Right.
And with that said, a conclusion could be that even if I had met Kurt Cobain in my practice, my therapy might have destroyed his ability to be as creative and imaginative as he really was. Sort of could bring melodies into himself and make something of it. A gift which very few of us have. So that is another part of the coin.
Yeah, that it needs to be, therapy needs to be balanced. There's risk and benefits in both directions, that there are unintended consequences. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think today, unfortunately, there are very many children who are developmentally arrested and who really should need vestibular stimulation in order to get more balanced. And there are a lot of debate around concentration problems today, and social media is very much blamed. But there is also another side of the coin here, which is what is the hen and what is the egg? Do children attract iPads and phones because they need something else instead? And this is a big question, but I think what is suggested from Brennan Spiegel's side about biogravitational medicine is very important to bring us further in order to help people to feel better.
I think it's like his work and his early work and our subsequent work unties a Gordian knot or cuts the Gordian knot. So at the moment we talk about the chicken and egg problem of, digital media versus, physical activity. We're living more sedentary lives, and that includes children. Are they then missing out on gravitational engagement? Is their development in terms of the vestibular system and other graviceptive systems sort of stunted as a result? And is that leading to symptoms of, ADHD or other syndromes, anxiety and depression for mental gravity, that rates of that are increasing as well? Is that something to do with a disordered sense of self from arrested vestibular development? That's an interesting hypothesis that I think biogravitational medicine gives a way to answer. It might not be the right answer, but at least it's a framework for investigating it, for untying the chicken and egg problem and say, well, maybe it's a holistic problem and they emerge together. They emerge at the same time from the same systems. It's what's the higher order, what actually is the egg if you go evolutionarily back in time. Well, that's going to be gravitational management in utero, vestibular, what comes first developmentally. So I think you're definitely on to the right track, and I think biogravitational medicine with your work is a strong, partnership. It shows you've got an applied side to our theoretical approach that needs data. It needs to be tested. So, Mats, thank you for joining us, because I think it starts the conversation for us professionally, and I think for listeners or for our audience, it answers some questions that maybe they have about their own development, their own symptoms, their own compensatory mechanisms, like what do people do? You're almost saying that Kurt Cobain was creative as a way of compensating for something that was missing during development, that he found a way to counterbalance those deficiencies or those parts of arrested development. Am I understanding you correctly, or is that too simplistic?
Yeah, I don't think he the gift. He didn't seek the gift.
Mm-hmm.
The gift came to him in a way.
Yeah.
And it might be that he was, from my point of view, open for something which few people is open for or
Right.
open for.
Mm.
And it might be so that he could do what he did. He could compose. He could go his own way in a way because he had these problems. And
Mm-hmm.
but in order to, I think we need a society which is very observant on people. We today, from my point of view, the society is too intellectual.
Mm.
We need to recognize our body, and the body is part of the gravitational system.
Mm.
And we have to be observant and not eager with young children's talents. We have to be more observant, and some children are very musically gifted, and we have to help them to develop that.
Mm.
But on the other hand, there are very many children, I think, who have sensorimotor difficulties, which are not sort of that gifted musically or artistically, but they just struggle hard to keep up with school and such. And we have to be observant on them and see how we can help them to build a better life. And for them, I think a sensorimotor perspective should be very suitable. And we have to bring in medicine here, psychology, psychiatry. This is a field which we have to explore together. But today also the pace is so fast, so much is happening, so we are sort of forgetting ourselves and other people, but we have to slow down and be more observant, I think.
I think that's the physical education teacher in you, saying we need to pay attention to the body and how people move to understand how they think and how they feel. I think that's great advice. And I think if somatosensory therapy fits within the umbrella of biogravitational medicine, I think we have a pathway forward for continued research in answering these broader questions. So someone like Kurt Cobain, his life, not just his talents, but his quality of life and his health problems aren't a mystery that needs to be solved 30 years after the fact. They can be understood in real time and addressed for children in the future. So Mats, thank you for joining us. I hope the audience has really enjoyed an open-ended discussion. We didn't really, plan where this would go. I think it's circled back, and I'm sorry for the technical interruption. I think we've closed it off nicely in joining your work to Brennan's and to biogravitational medicine. So thank you for joining us, and I'm sure you
Thank
and
you
I
for having me.
and Brennan will. No, it's a pleasure. We'll stay in touch and hopefully work together on, a biogravitational research project with children. That would be amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
If you like that episode, please like and subscribe and tell your friends about the Gravity Doctors. You can also follow us on social media. Check out the book Pull, and you can also check out our show notes for tips and links to some of our scientific articles. You can follow us online at thegravitydoctors.com. You can follow me, BrennanSpiegelMD.com, and Dr. Lachlan at lachlankent.au.